The polished granite floors of Harrington Industries' main lobby carried the same cold echo I remembered from years ago. Walking through those doors after 6 years felt like opening a time capsule. Everything looked identical, yet nothing felt the same. I smoothed the lapels of my charcoal blazer, worlds away from the thrift store finds I wore when my father first married Victoria Harrington, instantly gifting me an arrogant stepbrother named Colton. Now, at 33, I wasn't returning as Eliza Weston, the overlooked stepdaughter. I was returning as something else entirely. Ms. Weston. The receptionist glanced up, brow furrowed. I'm not seeing your name on the quarterly shareholders meeting roster. Look again, I said, keeping my smile perfectly neutral. I should be on there. Colton's voice sliced across the lobby before I could say another word, that same razor-edged confidence he'd been sharpening since boarding school. He looked exactly as I expected, tailored charcoal suit, hair immaculately groomed, and that signature smirk worn by people who've never once questioned their own entitlement. His stride broke rhythm for just a fraction of a second when he recognized me. Eliza. He composed himself instantly, lip curling. Well, this is unexpected. Here to beg your way back onto the payroll. The comment landed exactly where he intended. 6 years ago, when Dad passed suddenly, Colton had engineered my departure from the company with ruthless efficiency. He'd called it restructuring. Everyone else called it what it was, clearing the board of pieces that didn't belong in his game. Actually, I replied evenly, I'm here for the shareholders meeting. Colton let out a short, sharp laugh that bounced off the granite walls. That meeting is strictly for equity holders, Eliza. Not charity cases. He positioned himself in front of the elevator bank like a human barricade. Do yourself a favor and go home. If only he knew what home had looked like these past 6 years, not defeat, but construction. Quiet, deliberate, invisible construction. Mr. Harrington, the receptionist interjected carefully. Her credentials just came through the system. Override it, Colton snapped. I personally vet every attendee. This is an executive level, restricted. Unless, I said calmly, holding up my phone, shares were acquired through a network of independently managed holding companies, each operating just below mandatory disclosure thresholds. I tilted the screen toward him. You may want to check the ownership registry before the meeting begins. Something shifted behind his eyes. Not panic yet, just the first tremor of it. We should take this conversation upstairs, I suggested. The board is already seated. Security, he barked. Victoria appeared from the elevator then, draped in her signature composure. It dissolved the moment she saw me. What on earth is she doing here? Handling it, Mom, Colton muttered. I glanced at my watch. It's 9:58. 2 minutes until the meeting begins. We can continue this conversation in the lobby, or we can be adults and go upstairs. Your choice. Victoria's left eye gave a barely perceptible twitch. I remembered that tell from childhood. It meant the ground beneath her was shifting, and she knew it. Let her up, she said quietly. The boardroom hadn't changed, panoramic windows, a long oak table, 14 executives arranged like chess pieces around it. Their expressions ranged from puzzled to deeply curious as I entered behind Victoria and Colton. This meeting is closed, Colton began. A majority shareholder would disagree, I said, taking a seat near the head of the table. The room went silent. Colton's smirk had gone completely rigid. Sometimes the most powerful entrance isn't dramatic. It's simply showing up fully prepared when everyone assumed you'd stay down. I opened my briefcase and placed a branded documentation folder on the table in front of me. Your legal team received the filings 90 minutes ago. As if choreographed, the boardroom door opened. Richard Caldwell, Harrington Industries' longtime general counsel, walked in wearing an expression that told everyone everything before he said a word. The paperwork is airtight, he announced to the room. Over 6 years, through a coordinated network of acquisitions structured below SEC reporting thresholds, Ms. Weston has consolidated controlling interest in Harrington Industries. He paused. The transfers finalized this morning under the umbrella of Weston Capital Group. Colton's fist hit the table. That's not possible. Every major equity transfer requires board notification. Not, I said pleasantly, when each individual transaction stays beneath the filing trigger. Separately, they were invisible. Together, they add up to 73%. Victoria lowered herself into her chair slowly, as though her legs had quietly stopped working. 73, I confirmed, watching the number register across every face in the room. Which means, as of this morning, I hold controlling interest in the company my father built. The next 30 minutes unfolded methodically. My team secured executive access points across 3 floors while I walked the board through 7 years of financial records projected on the boardroom screen. Systematic misappropriation, I narrated calmly. Fabricated consulting expenditures routed to entities owned by Victoria's family. Manipulated equity transfers executed in the weeks following my father's death, transfers that were presented to the estate as legally necessary liquidations. Those were all properly documented, Colton started. Were they? I pulled up a scanned email chain. Because the SEC finds the documentation fascinating. Particularly the internal correspondence discussing how to time the transactions around the estate executor's oversight window. Several board members suddenly became very interested in the grain of the oak table. And then there's this. Security footage appeared on the screen, a timestamp reading 11:47 p.m., 2 nights before my father's death. Colton, walking into Dad's private office. The server you had wiped had an encrypted backup mirror. Remarkable what forensic IT recovery can do. Victoria stood up abruptly. Her chair scraped back with a sound like a gunshot. Mrs. Harrington. Richard Caldwell's voice was firm. Please do not make any further statements without counsel. The Financial Crimes Division has been briefed, I continued. But more importantly, the independent toxicology review I commissioned on samples retained from my father's final examination has produced results that are now part of an active investigation into the circumstances of his death. The room fractured. Board members began reaching for phones, pulling away from Victoria and Colton like a slow tide retreating from shore. Here's what happens next, I said, standing. You cooperate with investigators fully and transparently, or you don't. Either path has consequences. I'd encourage you to choose the one where you still have a future in this industry. My phone vibrated. A single message from the lobby. Federal agents are ready. Colton bolted for the door. My security team was already there. The weeks that followed rewrote everything. The headlines wrote themselves. Harrington heirs face federal charges in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Then, 10 days later, death of Harrington founder now subject of criminal investigation. I worked from my father's old office, my office now, and kept only one personal item on the desk, a photograph from my college graduation day, the 2 of us laughing before Victoria and Colton had entered the frame. The toxicology results came back conclusive 3 weeks in. Richard Caldwell delivered them personally and in silence. Poison. Premeditated. First-degree charges were filed by end of day. Victoria cracked during her second federal interview and laid everything at Colton's feet. He returned the favor with a statement of his own. I declined his request for a meeting. At the all-company assembly I called that Friday, every employee from senior leadership to facilities staff filled the main auditorium. I walked them through the new direction, restructured leadership, employee equity participation, overhauled ethics compliance protocols, and announced the creation of the James Weston Foundation for Corporate Accountability, funded entirely by the recovered offshore holdings. The applause lasted longer than I expected. That evening, packing up to leave, I found the graduation photo again. Picked it up, set it back down. You told me to be patient, I said quietly to the empty room. You were right. My phone buzzed. Victoria's attorney, pitching a cooperation deal. I typed 2 words and put the phone back in my drawer. No deal. Let the 2 of them dismantle each other from the inside. They'd spent years perfecting the technique on everyone else. Outside my window, the city was shifting from gold to navy as the sun dropped behind the skyline. Tomorrow's calendar was full, new board orientation, ethics charter ratification, and the first planning session for our expanded technology division, now operating under a new name, Weston Group. Colton once told me the shareholders' meeting wasn't a place for someone like me. He was right about one thing. The woman who walked into that lobby 6 years ago never could have belonged there. But she wasn't the one who walked in today.